The sky above the slave market was always gray, filled with smoke and dust. Huge ships landed with a loud roar, dropping off cages of alien prisoners. Some cried, some screamed, but most just sat quietly, their eyes empty. This place was called Sector 9, a human mining colony at the edge of space. In one corner, inside a rusty cage, sat a young alien girl. Her skin was pale blue, her hair white like snow, and her legs were twisted and weak. One of her arms hung loose, clearly broken. Her eyes didn't look around like the others. She stared at the ground, as if the world around her no longer mattered. The traders called her the Broken One. She's useless, one man said, laughing. Can't even walk properly. Another waved his hand. Not worth a single credit. But then, someone different arrived. He was tall, dressed in a black uniform, with a robotic arm and a scar across his face. People whispered his name, Commander Rian, a human war hero turned researcher. He didn't look like the others, and he didn't smile. His eyes scanned the cages slowly, like he was searching for something. When he reached the girl's cage, he stopped for a moment. He just stood there, staring at her. Then he said, "Open this one." The traders laughed. "Her? You're wasting your money." But Rian didn't argue. He dropped a few credit chips on the table and ordered, "Release her." Two guards opened the cage and pulled the girl out. She didn't resist, didn't speak. She simply looked up at Rian with tired, lifeless eyes. He took off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. "Come on," he said quietly. "You're coming with me." Everyone watched as he walked away with her, whispering behind his back, "Foolish. A broken thing. What is he thinking?" Back at Rian's private outpost, far from the noise of the colony, he placed the girl on a medical bed. Robotic arms scanned her body, showing old injuries, broken bones, and deep scars. Some wounds were never treated. Signs of torture, maybe. War. Rian stood quietly beside her, arms crossed. "She's been through hell," he muttered. The medical bot asked, "Shall we begin repair?" "Yes," Rian said. But carefully. Over the next few days, the girl remained silent. She didn't eat much, didn't speak a word, but her eyes followed everything. She watched Rian as he worked on machines, fixed drones, cleaned old weapons. Sometimes she'd look at his robotic arm and then look away quickly. One night, something strange happened. Rian was asleep in his chair when he heard a soft humming sound. He opened his eyes and saw light coming from the lab. He rushed inside. And there she was, standing in front of a broken console. The console, which hadn't worked in years, was glowing. She didn't touch it, just stood near it, eyes closed. The lights danced around her like tiny stars. Then suddenly, it shut off, and she collapsed. Rian ran to her and caught her before she hit the ground. He laid her back on the bed and looked at the console. What the hell was that? He whispered. The next morning he asked her, "Who are you?" She didn't answer, but her lips moved. A single word came out, soft like wind. "Kira." That was the first time she spoke. That night, Rian sat alone in the lab. He looked at her file again. No history, no race match, no records. She wasn't just any alien. And that console, it was alien tech, left behind by a lost civilization. It never worked for any human, until her. He looked at her sleeping on the bed, her face calm, peaceful for the first time. "She's not broken," he said to himself. "She's something else." Just then, one of the drones nearby turned on by itself. It floated toward Kira and hovered near her, like a loyal pet. Rian stared at it, surprised. He had never seen the drone respond to anyone, not even him. Whispered, "Who? What are you?" And outside, far away, something in the sky blinked. A satellite deep in space picked up a pulse, a signal that hadn't been heard in 1,000 years. And someone, or something, began listening. Asterisk, the rain fell on the outpost roof like quiet. Tapping fingers, Rian stood at the window, watching the storm pass through the dry planet sky. Kira sat across the room, wrapped in a blanket, her pale hands resting on her knees. She hadn't spoken again since that night in the lab. But something had changed. The broken girl who once looked lifeless now sat upright, her eyes more awake. Rian noticed how she watched everything, not with fear but focus. She was learning. Silently, carefully, like a soldier waiting for the right moment. "Do you remember where you're from?" Rian asked one morning. Kira didn't answer, but her eyes flickered, like a small flame touched by wind. And that night, her dreams began to whisper. In her sleep, she saw fire, towers made of crystal falling from the sky, voices screaming in a language no human had ever heard, and a glowing child running into the forest, her hands lit with silver light. Kira woke up gasping, sweat on her forehead. Rian was there, watching from his desk. He handed her a glass of water. "You've seen things," he said quietly. "I don't know who you are, but I think you were someone important." Kira looked down, her lips tight. "I tried to save them," she whispered. It was the second time she spoke, and the first time Rian heard pain in her voice. The next day, Rian brought out an old learning bot. He reprogrammed it to teach Kira human language, simple words, slow and clear. At first, she just stared at it, confused, but soon she began to repeat the words: sky, stone, food, pain, hope. Rian smiled. "You learn fast." Kira blinked, not sure if it was a compliment, but deep inside, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. A spark of self, a piece of who she used to be. Later that week, Rian showed her the console she touched. "It's alien tech," he said. "It's been dead since we found it. But when you stood near it, it came alive." Kira looked at it, nervous. "I don't remember why," she said softly. "I don't remember what I am." That night, while Rian slept, Kira walked into the lab again. She stood near the console and reached out her hand. The lights turned on once more, humming like a song. A soft voice echoed from the console, but not in human language. It spoke her language, the lost tongue of the architects. Kyra's eyes widened as the voice called her name. "Kyra of Lumeria," it said. "The last light." Suddenly, memories flashed in her mind. She saw a temple, high above the clouds. She saw her people, tall, glowing beings, falling in battle. And she saw herself standing at the core, sealing it with her own blood. She fell to the floor, holding her head, crying silently. The next morning, Rian found her there, lying beside the console. He helped her sit up and asked, "What happened?" Kira looked into his eyes and said, "I remember something, not everything, but enough. My people. They were called the architects. We built machines that could think and feel, heal and protect. But we were hunted, destroyed. I ran. I survived. But I lost everything." Rian's face changed, not with fear, but respect. "You're not just another alien," he said. "You're part of something ancient." Kira nodded slowly. "But I'm broken," she whispered. "My body, my mind. I'm not who I used to be." Rian placed his hand on the table, the metal fingers of his robotic arm tapping lightly. "I'm broken too," he said. "But sometimes broken things can still work. Sometimes they become stronger." Kira looked at him. Really looked at him for the first time. Maybe he understood more than she thought. Maybe he was the first being since her fall who didn't see her as weak. Outside, the rain had stopped, but above the clouds, a signal had already been sent. The console's activation had triggered a response across space, and far away, in a black ship hidden in the shadows, red eyes opened, a voice whispered, "The last architect has awakened." The silence inside the outpost was deep, but beneath that silence, something new had started to breathe. It was not a sound of machines or voices. It was the quiet hum of becoming. Kira stood alone in the workshop, surrounded by broken machines. Rian had gone out for supplies, trusting her to stay inside. She stared at the tools, sharp, shiny, and unfamiliar, but her hands moved on their own. She picked up a tiny cube, something she had seen Rian call a memory drive. It was dead, cracked, and forgotten, but when she touched it, it glowed faintly. Her eyes lit up, surprised. She whispered, "Wake, Without even knowing why, the cube blinked and projected a floating image, a map of the galaxy. Kira gasped, stepping back. The map flickered, showing stars she knew by heart. But none of them were alive anymore. Her world was gone, her people erased. Still, the cube responded to her voice, not anyone else's. When Rian returned, he saw the hologram hovering above her hand. His eyes widened, but he didn't shout. He simply asked, "How did you do that?" Kyra looked at him, unsure. "I didn't think, I just felt." That night, Rian sat beside her with his datapad. He showed her human alphabets, simple symbols. To his surprise, she read them fast, repeating each one with perfect tone. He smiled. "Your mind. It's built for learning." Kyra tilted her head. "I was trained young. To build, to shape, to lead." Then her voice broke. "But I failed." Rian didn't ask more. Not yet. Instead, he showed her a broken drone he had been trying to fix for years. "Can you try?" he asked. Kira hesitated, then nodded. She placed her hands on the drone's surface, closed her eyes, took a deep breath. The room dimmed slightly, and then, click, the drone's eyes turned on, and it rose slowly into the air. Rian stood up, speechless. "That thing had no power," he said. "You didn't repair it. You woke it." Kyra didn't smile, but her eyes held something new, wonder. For the first time, she didn't feel useless. For the first time, she didn't feel broken. The next day, trouble knocked. Captain Mora, head of local security, arrived at the outpost, tall, cold, and strict. She looked at Kira with sharp eyes. "I've heard rumors," she said. "Alien tech reacting to your ... guest. That's dangerous." Rian kept his calm. "She's under my care. My research." Mora leaned closer. "Don't get too attached to things that don't belong." Then she walked out, leaving a warning behind. "Next time something glows without permission, I'll take it." After she left, Kira asked, "She hates me?" Rian nodded. "She fears you, because she doesn't understand you." That evening, Kira went to the roof alone. She looked at the stars, those distant fires she once called home. A whisper came from inside her, a language long lost, calling her name. She closed her eyes and placed her hands on the cold metal surface. Lights formed beneath her fingers, lines, curves, symbols. The outpost itself began to respond. Hidden systems turned on one by one, sensors, shields, scanners, all waking up like sleeping wolves down below. Alarms started to flash. Rian rushed upstairs, saw her surrounded by floating light. "Kira!" he shouted. She opened her eyes, breathless. "I didn't mean to." Rian placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay. Whatever this is, it's a part of you." Just then, a new signal beeped on Rian's datapad. An unknown ship had entered orbit, silent and unregistered. It hovered just beyond the sky's reach, hidden behind a cloud of debris. Watching, waiting, Kira looked up, her face pale. "They found me," she whispered. "The hunters." Rian stared at the screen, then back at her. "We'll protect you," he said. But Kira shook her head. "No, I have to remember who I really am." She turned to the stars once more, her voice steady now. "If I don't remember, they'll come for everyone." And in the dark above, inside the shadowed ship, a voice hissed through a mask. "The architect breathes again. Begin the harvest." Asterisk deep under the surface of the planet, something ancient had begun to stir. Not a machine, not a weapon, but a memory. It started with a whisper in the wind, a soft hum in the soil beneath the outpost. Only Kira could hear it, like a song she once knew in another life. She woke up with her eyes glowing faintly, her hands shaking. "Something's calling," she told Rian the next morning. "It's not a voice, but it's pulling me." Rian studied her closely. He had seen many things in war, but never anything like this. He didn't ask for proof. Instead, he packed gear, loaded supplies, and said, "Then we follow it." They left the outpost before dawn, traveling in an old hover truck across the desert. The land was empty, silent, but the signal grew stronger with every mile. Kira sat in silence, her hand placed on the control panel. Guiding them, hours later, they reached a canyon carved by time and sand. At the bottom, hidden behind rocks, was a black door made of stone and metal. It had no handle, no lock, just a circle in the center. Kira stepped forward, her eyes fixed on it. She placed her hand on the circle. The door pulsed once, then opened without a sound. Inside was a tunnel lined with symbols. The walls shimmered with faint blue light. As they walked deeper, Kira began to read the carvings. "They're not just symbols," she whispered. "They're memories." They entered a wide chamber filled with machines long asleep. At the center stood a strange device, a floating orb wrapped in stone and wires. Rian approached it, but nothing happened. Kira stepped forward, and the orb turned gold. A voice echoed in the chamber, ancient and calm. "Architect Kyra of Lumeria," it said. "You carry the code of light. You are the last flame of the core." Kira fell to her knees, memories flooding back like fire. She saw the Temple of Stars, her people building wonders. Then, fire, darkness, betrayal. She remembered hiding the core, locking it far beneath the surface to keep it safe. She was the one who sealed it. "I buried it," she said, her voice shaking. "I sealed the core before they came. But I don't know why I survived." Rian placed a hand on her shoulder. "You were meant to," he said. "Maybe your people wanted one last hope." The orb floated toward her. As she reached for it, it melted into her skin like liquid light. Her body shook, her eyes glowing with golden fire. Machines around the room began to wake. Screens lit up. Engines rumbled softly. The chamber was alive again. But so was the sky above the canyon. The black ship moved closer. It dropped a small drone into the canyon. The drone hovered quietly, scanning the energy below. It sent a message back to its masters. "Target confirmed. Core activity detected." Inside the chamber, Rian checked his scanner. "We're not alone," he said. Kira nodded. "They're watching." She walked to one of the old consoles and placed her hand on it. The console responded with a map, stars, planets, corridors of light. At the center was a glowing symbol. Kira pointed. "This is the core's source. It's not just power," she said. "It's memory, history, and a seed. If it's destroyed, my people's legacy is gone forever." Rian studied the map. The location was far, buried deep inside an abandoned moon. "That's where we need to go," he said. "But they'll come for it first." Kira looked at him, fear mixing with fire in her eyes. "Then we go before they do." As they left the chamber, the machines shut down behind them, but one signal kept blinking in the dark. A warning light. "Pursuers inbound." It flashed again. And again. That night, back at the outpost, the stars above were no longer calm. Satellites turned, sensors flared, and ships began to move. The forgotten signal had been found. And every hunter in the galaxy wanted what Kira now carried inside her. She sat alone, staring at her hands, no longer broken, no longer weak, but still unsure. Still afraid, Rian walked over, sat beside her without saying a word. He handed her a new datapad that had coordinates, supplies listed, and a message. "Whatever happens, I'll go with you." Kyra looked at him, this strange human who believed in her more than she believed in herself. She nodded, quietly. "Then we leave at sunrise." And high above them, far beyond the light of any star, a masked figure watched from a throne of steel. "The core wakes," he whispered. "Bring me the architect, dead or alive." The sun had not yet risen, but fire had already reached the sky. The outpost exploded into flames, metal twisting, alarms howling. Kira was thrown across the floor, dust and sparks blinding her sight. Rian's voice cut through the chaos. "Kira, run." They weren't ready. The attack came too fast, too clean, no warning, no mercy. Black armored soldiers dropped from ships without sound. They didn't speak, didn't ask, they only hunted. Kira stumbled to her feet, blood on her face. A drone flew toward her, buzzing like an insect. Her instincts took over. She raised her hand and the drone stopped in midair. It spun once, then collapsed to the ground without a spark. Rian grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the back tunnel. "This way," he shouted. "They're not here for me, they're here for you." They escaped into the canyon, riding the hoverbike into the shadows behind them. The outpost burned like a falling star. For the next 2 days they stayed hidden, moving at night. Resting in caves and dry valleys, Kira barely spoke, but her powers grew stronger. She could hear machines before they moved. She could feel satellites watching her from orbit. One evening, Rian caught her staring into the fire. Her hands trembled, but not from fear, from pressure. "I don't know. What's happening to me?" she whispered. "I'm changing." "Faster than I can hold," Rian sat beside her, his voice calm. "Your mind was locked for too long. Now that it's opening, it's like a flood." Kyra looked up. "What if I lose control?" He answered without blinking. "Then I'll be there to pull you back." The next morning, a hunter ship spotted them. Kyra felt it first. A sharp pain behind her eyes, before the engines even echoed. She said, "They found us." Rian didn't wait. He activated a cloaking field around the bike. They sped across the cliffs as the black ship followed like a hungry shadow. The hunter ship released flying probes, fast, deadly, and sharp like razors. One probe got close, cutting through their shield. Kira raised both hands, eyes glowing gold. A sudden wave of energy burst out from her. The probes froze midair, then shattered like glass. But the burst knocked her out cold. Rian caught her before she fell, guiding the bike with one hand. He whispered, "Don't break now." They reached the entrance to an old ruin, a forgotten place from another war. Inside, they hid behind thick stone walls. The hunter ship circled above but didn't enter. It hovered like it was waiting. While Kira rested, Rian explored the ruin. He found a broken statue. It looked like her. Same eyes, same marks on the face, same glow on the palms. He realized the truth. "These aren't just ruins," he whispered. "This is your graveyard." Kyra woke and walked slowly to the statue. She touched it, and it crumbled to dust. "I was born here," she said. Before the fall, this was a sanctuary. Now just bones. Rian looked at her with careful eyes. "You're not just some survivor. You're a weapon they couldn't kill." Kyra shook her head. "I wasn't made to fight," she whispered. "I was made to create. But now all I do is destroy." The walls of the ruin began to shake. Rian pulled her back as a hidden door opened. Inside was a small chamber, and in the center, a white stone cube. It glowed when Kira entered. As she touched it, a voice echoed inside her head. "You are not hunted because you are dangerous. You are hunted because you are hope." Suddenly, the hunter ship above began to descend. Kira stood up, her face no longer afraid. "We can't run forever," she said. Rian loaded his weapon. "Then let's show them what happens when hope fights back." Outside, the black-armored soldiers gathered, weapons drawn. Inside, Kira closed her eyes and let the cube melt into her chest. Her body rose slightly off the ground. Lights danced around her like tiny stars. She opened her eyes, glowing with power. The doors to the ruin opened, wind blasting outward. Kira stepped into the light, and the soldiers froze. Their weapons shook in their hands, because what they saw was not a broken girl, not a slave, not a target. They saw an architect. Asterisk. The world was quiet, too quiet, not the peace of calm winds or soft voices, but the heavy silence before something ancient wakes. Kyra stood alone in the heart of a forgotten temple. The walls were made of light and stone, humming softly like a sleeping heart. Beneath her feet, glowing lines pulsed in rhythm with her breath. This was the place the map had pointed to, the core. She could feel it below, not like an object, but like a soul, a living memory sealed. For centuries, it waited for her, and only her. Behind her, Rian stood still, watching. He didn't understand what he was seeing, but he knew it was sacred. "You don't have to do this alone," he said. Kira looked over her shoulder. "I was born alone," she replied. "But maybe I don't have to stay that way. She turned and walked toward the altar. At the center was a stone disc with a symbol glowing in soft gold, her people's mark, a spiral of flame and stars. She reached out, hand shaking, as soon as her fingers touched the stone. The entire temple shook. The floor beneath them opened like a blooming flower, revealing a spiral staircase made of light. No dust, no cracks, as if the years had passed around it. Never touching it, Kira stepped into the light. Each step she took echoed like thunder in her chest. Rian followed, silent but steady, at the bottom. The core pulsed like a beating heart. It floated in the center of a round chamber, pure energy. Wrapped in a shell of memory, ancient words circled it like stars. Kira could read them without trying. Pain is the gate. Truth is the key. Only the wounded may awaken the light. She fell to her knees, trembling. I don't want to feel it again, she whispered. I buried it for a reason. Rian crouched beside her. What did you bury? Kira closed her eyes. I watched my world burn, she said, her voice thin. I watched my family die, not because I ran, but because I stayed. She remembered it all now. The screams, the fire, the way her sister reached for her, through falling glass. Kira had locked the core and stayed behind to buy them time. But no one survived, only she did, and she had carried the weight ever since. Tears rolled down her cheeks as the core spoke, not with sound, but feeling. It didn't judge her. It simply waited. She stood slowly, her hands glowing. I am Kira of Lumeria, she said. Daughter of light, sister of the fallen. I will not run anymore. She stepped into the center of the chamber and placed both hands on the core. It flashed white, then red, then gold. Her body shook as the energy passed through her. Her skin cracked with light. Her hair lifted in the air like fire and wind. The core opened, and a voice filled the room. You have faced your grief. You have accepted your guilt. You are ready. The shell cracked, and light poured into Kira's chest. She screamed, not in pain but in power. The walls of the temple glowed with her story, images of her people, of cities in the sky, of harmony lost to war. Rian watched in awe as the chamber turned into living history. When the light faded, Kira stood tall, no longer shaking, no longer afraid. The core was inside her now, not just energy, but knowledge. She remembered everything. She looked at Rian, her eyes glowing with calm fire. I know what they want, she said. They don't fear my power. They fear what I can teach. Outside, the sky had changed. Storm clouds circled the temple like dark wings. Enemy ships descended like shadows falling from heaven. Rian loaded his weapon. There's too many of them, he said. Kira walked past him and placed her hand on the temple wall. Lines of gold spread across the stone like rivers of light. The ground shook, and towers rose from the sand, old defenses waking from sleep. They came for a weak girl, Kira said. They're going to meet something else. The sky opened with fire. The battle had begun, but Kira did not fear it, because now she was no longer a lost soul, no longer a forgotten name. She was the architect reborn, and she had awakened. The sky was no longer a sky, it had become a battlefield. Flames burned across the clouds. Enemy ships blocked the sun, casting black shadows over the ancient temple. Lightning crackled across the sand as war began. Kira stood on the highest tower, her cloak waving in the storm wind. Her hands were wrapped in light, her eyes like twin stars. She wasn't just waiting, she was calling below her. Rian barked orders to the defense units. Old machines, awakened by Kira, moved like giants. Reborn. Guns rotated, shields rose, and drones flew like birds protecting their nest. But the enemy was massive. They came in dozens, dark ships with red lights and no names. They didn't speak. They only hunted. At the front of the invading army stood the one called Vor, a masked leader who once helped destroy the architect race. He raised his hand, and the ships opened fire. Missiles flew. Explosions shook the earth. Dust covered everything, but through the smoke, the tower still stood, and Kira had not moved. She closed her eyes, listening, not to the noise but to the pulse. The core inside her beat in time with the earth, the sky, the memory of her people. She reached out, and the temple responded. Glowing lines spread across the valley, forming a symbol, the spiral of light and flame. The ground opened, and weapons of old rose from the depths. Machines that hadn't moved in 1,000 years now stood at her command. One by one, they came. Alive, one by one, they remembered her. Kira spoke. Her voice calm and deep. I am the daughter of creation. I am the last light of Lemuria. To those who seek to erase us, I give you one chance. Turn back, Vor laughed behind his mask. Your kind are dead, he said. You are just a shadow. Kira raised her hand, and the ground answered. Towers fired beams of golden energy, cutting through ships like paper. Drones swirled in perfect patterns, blocking incoming missiles. The enemy's front line was shattered in seconds, but they kept coming. More ships, more soldiers, more fire. Kira began to glow brighter, floating above the tower, her arms stretched out, pulling energy from the core. She screamed as the power flowed through her, fierce and wild. But then, she saw something in the corner of her mind. Rian, wounded, surrounded near the temple steps. She didn't hesitate. She vanished in a blink of light and reappeared beside him. Rian struggled to stand. Don't stop, he said, blood on his lips. They need you to finish this. Kyra knelt beside him. Placing her hand on his chest, a soft glow spread through him, and the wound closed. He gasped and blinked. You healed me? Kyra smiled gently. No, she said. You believed in me. That healed more than the wound. She stood again, this time taller than ever before. She looked at the sky, filled with flame, and whispered one final word. Awaken. From the heart of the planet, something answered. A final beacon of light burst upward, spreading across the sky like a second sunrise. It reached every corner of space, every satellite, every sleeping piece of architect tech still hidden across the galaxy. And then, silence. Ver's ships stopped, their systems confused, overpowered, broken. Kira had not just activated the core, she had reconnected the entire forgotten network of her people. A massive wave of ancient architect warships woke from slumber across the stars. Their AI systems scanned for command input. They found it in one place. Kira, back on the ground. Vor dropped to one knee, his systems shutting down. His mask cracked, revealing a face filled with rage and fear. He looked up at Kira. You were supposed to die, he said. I did, she replied. But I chose to rise. And then, nothing. Ver's body vanished in a flash of failed teleport. The enemy fleet began to retreat. Confused and leaderless, the storm above faded. The wind slowed. The world exhaled. Later that night, Kira stood at the edge of the temple, Rian beside her, arm bandaged but smiling. What now? He asked. She looked at the stars. We rebuild, she said. We teach them who the architects were, and who we still are. A beacon pulsed from the core, not a weapon, but a signal, a message across the stars. We are still here, Kyra placed her hand over her heart, feeling the core's rhythm. She wasn't alone anymore. She wasn't hunted anymore. She wasn't broken anymore. She was a leader. She was a memory. She was a beginning. She was the architect.